Hi and welcome to this video of the Simplified Openings series. In this video, I would like to demonstrate one surprising idea, at least to me, that shockingly, I would say, solves, I think, a decades-old problem or variation for black in the Grünfeld defense. We are going to talk about the Russian system of the Grunfeld Defense, and the Russian system of the Grunfeld Defense has been a mainstay and a major system against the Grunfeld for many decades, ever since it started its existence somewhere in the 30s, almost 100 years ago. And it has been employed by such legends starting from Mikhail Botvinnik, who used it in his matches against Mislov. Then it was used by Anatoly Karpov in his matches against Garry Kasparov. And it has been always considered one of the critical responses against the Grunfeld defense. So, the Russian system, let's see what it is. d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, d5, knight f3, bishop g7, and the move queen b3. So, the queen is exerting pressure on the d5 pawn and immediately forcing black to do something about it. I'm always very surprised to discover, for example, let's call them solutions, even though obviously there is not an ultimate solution, but still kind of solutions, quick practical solutions to decades-old systems that happen early on. So the solution happens early on. So and already in this position we have the let's say the solution, that I mentioned in the name of the video. The pawn on d5 is attacked, and like ever since the beginning of the system, two moves were basically played: taking on c4, eliminating the attack by gaining a tempo, or just playing c6 and accepting the fact that black will be somewhat more passive here. I think this goes a bit against the nature of the Grunfeld, but of course it cannot really be a bad move. And historically, after dc4, queen c4, castles e4, there have been several systems that have been employed. For example, a so-called Smyslov system, bishop g4, also played in the, invented in a way by Vasily Smyslov, but also played in the famous game Botvinnik-Fischer at the Varna Olympiad in 1962. The idea is to exchange the bishop for a knight that weakens the defense of the center, and then the knights are relocated via d7, b6, knight c6, and there is a very nice piece coordination in the black camp. There is also the Prince system by Lodevaik, I think that's the pronunciation, Prince, knight a6. This was a favorite of Garry Kasparov. He used it in his matches against Karpov with the idea of c5. Korchnoi also used the Prince system when he was playing the Grunfeld. There is also the modern move knight c6 intending e5, and lately let's say the last most popular system, even though it's known since the 70s when several Hungarian players started using it, the move a6, intending b5 and bishop b7. A curious fact about this Hungarian system is that it was first played, in fact, by none other than Alexander Alyekhin, the world champion, in his world championship match against Ewe. And Alyekhin got it right, but he kind of misevaluated a little bit, because the game went bishop f4, b5, queen c7, and here Alyekhin understood that black should have compensation, only that he didn't understand that black should in fact go for the endgame. He played queen e8, after which black did not have compensation, but queen c7, bishop c7, bishop b7, and black has excellent compensation in the endgame. And in fact, the last, let's say, surge of popularity of the Russian system was somewhere around, I think, 20 years ago, maybe a bit more, when the Hungarian system was basically what everybody was playing, and somehow white stopped using the Russian system. But there is a lot of theory involved here in all these systems. So with this, after this small introduction, we come to the, let's say, solution, and that solution is the move c5. I was really shocked when I saw this move. Maybe I had seen it before, because then I checked and I saw that, for example, Shahriar Mamedyarov has played this move like 3 years ago, and he didn't have any problem. So probably I have seen that game, but have forgotten about it because the Grunfeld was no longer part of my repertoire, so I wasn't following the developments closely. And it's really surprising that this move simplifies things a lot for black, and it just seems to hold very nicely theoretically. Yeah. What even makes it more practical is that white doesn't really have a wide choice against c5 already. Yeah. So let's explore. Yeah, and I mentioned, okay, or I will mention now that the kind of inspiration, yeah, for this video was the game I noticed played by Alexander Grischuk, who used to play the Grünfeld, by the way, long time ago. It was his main opening, for example, in his candidates matches in 2011 when he got to the final, losing to Boris Gelfand there. And but after that he sort of slowly abandoned it. But now I noticed that he started playing it again in online tournaments, and also not only online tournaments. So here white probably just has to take on d5, because taking on c5 after d4, knight b5 castles gives black the standard Grunfeld activity. Already taking a second pawn, knight bd4 is dangerous, knight e4, and we get the typical Grunfeld stuff. Yeah, bishop is active, knight on e4, queen a5 is a threat. The combination of these moves and pieces is very potent in the Grunfeld. So e3, queen a5 check, bishop d2, knight d2, knight d2, knight c6, excellent compensation for black. Unopposed dark squared bishop and pressure in the center, and at least one pawn will be regained with the fantastic compensation for the other. So instead of taking the second pawn, e3 is better, but e5, ed4, ed4, bishop e2, knight c6, castles. It's comfortable for black after knight d7 because knight c5 is coming. Let's say queen a3, queen e7, and knight c5 again is a threat. And obviously black has excellent development at the same time. The bishop is hanging, don't forget about that. So very good play for black. So this tells us that dc5 is not really an option. cd5 should be played, cd4, knight d4, and now knight takes d5. Yeah, counter-attacking that knight on d4. Again, it's only one line that white can play to try to pose some problems to black. And curiously enough, that line was not played in the two games that I mentioned, the one being Shankland Mamedjarov from Baku 2022, and the other one, Vetokhin Grischuk, played this year 2025. So in both those games, white played queen d5, probably surprised by the opening choice by black, going for the endgame, but the endgame is harmless for black. Yeah, so bishop takes d4, queen takes d8, king takes d8, bishop d2, and now Mamedjarov played knight c6. Grischuk started with bishop e6. Both cases, endgame is harmless. Let's follow Grischuk's game because he actually managed to win against Sava Vetokhin, a strong grandmaster, from this equal endgame. He won. So g3, knight c6, bishop g2, rook c8, castles, king e8, rook ac1, f6, and with king f7 next, the engine already gives black some advantage. What more can we want? Yeah, white played sensibly and ended up worse. Sounds promising, yeah? So that deals with the queen d5 line. Yeah. So the only critical line is actually knight takes d5, bishop d4, and now bishop h6. Yeah, this is the only, let's say, thing that white can latch onto in this variation, which is to stop black from castling and keeping that king in the center. True, black needs to navigate a little bit the ensuing variations, but I don't think it's too complicated. One, and second, with good preparation, it's more than possible. And ultimately, and the most important thing is that black actually gets a very good game here. So we start with the move e6, attacking the knight. Yeah. Now, white should be careful here because it's not only the knight that is being attacked, also the queen's diagonal, h4 d8 diagonal is open, and queen h4 attacking f2, and the bishop on h6 is something to be careful about. So therefore, to kind of keep the momentum going, white should go long castle, let's say e3, bishop e5 is fine for black. The knight is still attacked, and let's say if it moves, knight b4, knight d7, knight is coming to c5. Black is doing all right. The king cannot castle, but the comfortable development that black gets, knight c5, maybe bishop d7, queen somewhere, maybe long castle, compensates for that. But after e3, there is also the endgame. Queen d5, queen d5, e d5, e d4, knight c6. And you could argue that, okay, pair of bishops in an endgame, but this is just dead equal. Yeah, then first the pawn is hanging, but black actually has a very simple setup. Bishop comes to e6, f6 is played to control e5. Yeah, maybe g5, and the pawns are placed on dark squares to control the dark squares, and there is a light squared bishop on the board that controls the other squares, so it's basically almost like a fortress for black. So long castle, yeah? And now again, you want more complex life, you want a simple life. If you want simple life, take on d5 with the queen. Queen d5, e d5, rook takes d4, knight c6, rook takes d5, bishop e6. So black is a pawn down, white has a pair of bishops, but black still gets this very good Grünfeld compensation. Rook d1. And now, I think more in the spirit of the Grunfeld is king e7. The point is that if bishop a2, there is this slightly unpleasant maneuver, bishop g7 and bishop f6. Yeah, still emphasizing the problems with the king. Therefore, king e7, much better. Yeah, and basically playing for an advantage in development. Rooks are coming to the DNC files. Then ideas like knight b4 start to appear, and it's clear that black has good compensation. Let's say king b1, rook h d8, rook c1. White must avoid the exchange of rooks because otherwise the rook is getting to the first rank. Now knight b4, hitting a2, b3, rook a c8. Now trying to exchange rooks, and then if the rooks exchange, rook c2 can become an idea, and a2, a5, a4. It's clear that there are no problems here for black. So that's the simpler solution. Yeah, I mean, exchanging queens and going for this endgame. But there is also the more complicated one with knight c6. Defending the bishop on d4 and still attacking the knight on d5. Yeah. Now knight b4 is critical. e3 again leads to a harmless endgame. Queen d5, and now black can even go take the pawn. Bishop takes e3. Bishop takes e3, e d5, rook d5, bishop e6, rook c5, bishop a2. Now we have a different type of endgame. Now black is a pawn up, but in an open position the bishops should offer compensation for equality for white. So that's equal again, and therefore knight b4. Yeah, and here as we see these alternatives for white not being critical, these are the more critical moves for white if he wants to put pressure on black. And but already here black has a choice. Again, well, he had a choices even before. Simpler or more complicated solution. Yeah, simpler is bishop d7. Yeah, simply defending the knight. And after e3, bishop f6, knight c6. Yeah, it appears tricky because the bishop cannot take because the queen is hanging, and bc6 just looks ugly. But there is a very nice move, queen c7, pinning the knight. And after king b1, bishop c6, it's again equal. Queen b6 can come, yeah. And the fact that the king is uncastled doesn't really alter the fact that black has a good position, especially as this bishop attacks with the queen on b6, b2. It's most likely that the queens will be exchanged, and then in the endgame will be just equal. So there's a simpler solution, the more complicated one, but also offering some sort of traps that white can fall into, is knight a5. And already queen a4 loses on the spot more or less, because after bishop d7, yeah, the queen is short of squares, and rook c8 is coming. Yeah, so queen a3, now knight c4, queen b3, knight f6. Yeah, and the engine suggests this is just winning for black. b2 is attacked, rook c8, and well, black wins. If something like queen d3, bishop f6, again, the exchange of queens, it's an equal endgame. And queen a3 is the last option to, okay, queen a3 and queen c2 are the better moves. But queen a3, knight c4, bishop, queen a4, bishop d7. is a slight variation of what we looked at, but here the fact is that white can take on d4 and use the fact that there is a pin on the d file, but it still leads to an equal endgame. Take on a4, take on d8, rook d8, b3. This is the point of white's play, forking the light pieces. But rook c8, b takes a4, and f6 leads to this endgame where white has two light pieces, but black again has development advantage and activity. So king f7, rook d8, and all sorts of threats against the king. Thanks to these discovered checks, white is still seriously back in development. So again, black has enough counterplay. And the final move, queen c2. Now, again, queen b6, nothing wrong with that, getting away from the pin, but bishop d7 is nicer, I think, threatening rook c8. Yeah, and after king b1, now bishop f6, queen b6, maybe rook c8, maybe bishop c6, maybe knight c6, maybe rook d8 later. Again, all sorts of naturally coming moves with equality for black. And this is in fact the most critical line against the idea of c5. As you can see, I mean, yes, there are some complications, maybe small ones to navigate, but generally I think black is doing just great. And I think from the lines we saw, it's more often white who ends up in some sort of trouble because of this lag in development on the king side. So there we have it. This is like a really practical, good line, I think, for black against the Russian system in the Grunfeld. Then if you're a Grunfeld player, I think you can, maybe solve your problem against the Russian system by avoiding all the masses of theory that are present in all the other lines. So I'll wrap up this video with a short story of my let's say experience and history with the Grunfeld Defense. I kind of liked what Mikhail Tal said about the Grunfeld Defense. Tal almost never played the Grunfeld, but he said that he was always platonically in love with the Grunfeld. Yeah, and I really like that construction because it applies to me as well, because I always liked it a lot, the aesthetics of it, the idea of it, this bishop on g7, this dynamic counterplay, this piece play, and when you analyze it, it always looks so great. But when I played it, well, eventually my results were positive on the black side of the Grunfeld, over 50%. But I realized as I was playing it that the types of positions that I was getting and how I was getting them and how I was playing them were not really to my taste. So that's why I also like to say that I was, even though I played it quite a bit, so maybe it wasn't as platonic as in Tal's case, but I really like this, construction, yeah, platonically in love with the Grunfeld defense. Okay, so I hope you're not platonically in love with the Grunfeld, or even if you are, you may play it from time to time. I think this still is a good line to have in mind. So I'll wrap it up. As usual, check out my Chessable courses. Very often they are on a discount, so grab one while it is at the discount. Also, consider subscribing to my Substack newsletter. Every Saturday I send out an email where you can read about interesting topics in chess. And in case if you haven't done so already, make sure you smash that subscribe button and make sure you don't miss a video on this channel. So guys, thanks for watching. See you soon again. Cheers.